So you said we hear you, but we've been hearing that message in some form over the past 3 years, and the fact is the prices are not coming down; they're going up. Debt is also rising; that's going up. So why should Americans believe the president and vice president?
Well, there's some prices that are definitely coming down. So there are airfares. Airfares are. Hold on. Airfares. Hold on. Yes, airfares are lower now than when President Biden took office. So airfares are lower now than they were pre-pandemic. And airfares have been falling for about 15 months in a row, year over year. And of course, prescription drugs. If you look at prescription drugs, that's an area where we've taken firm action to lower prices. I would also say the following. We have more work to do. Prices are still too high. You have a point. Prices are still too high. And that's why you will hear the president and the vice president continue I feel like we make announcements every week on this, including this week with housing supply and forthcoming announcements I'm not allowed to talk about that are coming on Friday. Tomorrow. But I wish I could say something about them that are very much in this spirit. So, I think the question is, to me, are you, your question is you're thinking about sort of the way I'm thinking about it, which is, okay, we hear you, are we taking action? Yes. I think the answer there is a strong yes. We are taking action to cut costs. Housing, which you saw this week, other things which I can't talk about, which you'll see tomorrow. Of course, prescription drugs, of course, healthcare, junk fees, airlines, airfares. Now, groceries is something the president has used the bully pulpit to nudge grocers, saying, or food producers, if your input costs are coming down, which they are, then instead of padding your profit margins, how about passing some of those savings forward to consumers? We've seen a lot of grocers who have gone into the newspapers and said, yeah, we're doing that. Now, you can say, that's because the president said so or for other reasons, but that's, a good coincidence.
But still energy prices too. I mean, it went from when the date President Biden came into office to today, the stuff that people need is up.
So the price of gas is down. Over the past year, is the price of gas, higher than when the president took office? Sure, that's going to be the case over many presidents because, that's a price, it's a global price that tends to go up over time. I think the question you always have to ask yourself in this is twofold. One, are we taking action to help lower costs? I think on energy, the president has a great record. He oversaw the largest release of barrels of oil from the strategic reserve, not just ours, but he coordinated something you can do if you have a responsible foreign policy. He coordinated with other countries to release their own barrels of oil from their strategic reserve. So he did something else. That's point one. Are you taking action? Unequivocal yes. Part two, don't just look at the price side of the equation. Somebody was asking me about newspaper articles that are negative. So one of the things that I will say gets under my skin is when reporters say this price is up 10%, this price is up 20%, and they end the piece there. You also have to look at the income side of the equation. How much have wages gone up? How much has income gone up? I think it's the Joint Committee, the Joint Economics Committee, Democrats on the Joint Economics Committee did a study of this, and they found that for the average household, their income is up, $3,000 pre-pandemic because you have to factor in both job gains and wage gains. And when you do that, you get a much more complete picture. So please look at both sides of the ledger, not just the price side of the ledger, but the wage side of the ledger. Wages have been beating prices for 17 months in a row. That has to mean something.
But the president's been in office 42 months, and I know this is all. The president has been in office 42 months.
Speaking of the president.
Wages are down 1.3% from the month President Biden got in office.
So I think that if you look at the wages of production non-supervisory workers, I'll have to check that out. At least pre-pandemic, yes. So pre-pandemic, I know that those wages are up. Now, when the president took office, hold on a second, sorry.
Not me.
When the president took office, there was a real spike in wages. Around the time the president took office, there was a real spike in wages. This had nothing to do with the president, okay? And you never heard him take credit for it. The reason why it happened is because in the pandemic, a large group of low-wage workers dropped out of the labor force, and that mechanically pushes up that number. So what you have to do, and we have tables and graphs, and they're in my speech that I gave at EPI a couple of weeks ago, so I'll make sure you have them. you have to control for that. And when you do that, you see that compensation is up. You see that disposable personal income, real, controlling for inflation, is up. So do me a favor, whenever you're writing about prices, look at the other side of the ledger and write about wages and incomes as well, and the pace at which, in many cases, this does depend on your starting point. In many cases, they're going to be beating prices, and that's a good development.
I would love